Our virtual adventures continue here on the Tampa Bay 55 podcast. Ryan Bass from my couch, Rob Higgins from his table with that now viral plant behind him as we do this Zoom once again.
It's become a hugely popular item now online. I have seen it take off in a lot of different places on a lot of different websites.
You better tell Laney and Landon not to maybe run too fast now and break one, because I don't think you're going to get a replacement at this point. I mean, it's just
no, one of a kind, much like yourself, Ryan.
Oh, thank you, sir. Welcome to the Tampa Bay 55 podcast here. Ryan Bass, Rob Higgins, hanging out with you. We've got a good podcast lined up with a pretty big guest, somebody that you and your team works very closely with, Peter O'Reilly, basically who's in charge, just to simplify his title, because basically we can go on for an entire podcast length of how important he is, but he's in charge of planning and putting on events like the NFL Draft, like the Super Bowl for the NFL. Really excited to talk to him today, Rob.
Oh, absolutely. He's somebody we've wanted to have on since the inception, because there's no better or more unique perspective than his when it comes to Super Bowl, and really excited to get an opportunity to dive in and ask him all sorts of questions, whether it's about the draft, whether it's about this past year's Super Bowl, whether it's about the planning for ours. They've been such phenomenal partners, and actually he's right at the top of that partnership, and it's great to get a chance to sit down and visit with him.
And certainly he gives some takeaways as well from, what was a really successful, from my opinion, I think yours and many across the country, virtual NFL draft. That was a hit with a lot of fans. A lot of people tuned in across the country. And I think his team, the broadcast partners, and everyone did a phenomenal job of putting that on. So really awesome to get his perspective, and we'll hear from him in just a little bit. But speaking of virtual, Rob, I mean, this is the time where, when we're starting to creep closer, I think you said 40 to 39, depending on how you're counting as far as weeks out from Super Bowl 55 in Tampa. This is when you start to see some of those scouting trips where people start coming down here and checking out venues. A little bit hard to do right now, given what's going on in our country, Rob. But you, your team, the NFL, they've been innovating in a sense and trying to work towards some of those venues and getting down there to check those out.
Yeah, I think this is where you would have seen in a traditional scenario, being a few weeks out removed from the draft, you would have start to see folks come in town to be able to look at specific venues and start to identify their own individual programs, plans. And so I'm really proud about how our team and the NFL and then all our community partners are stepping up and thriving in this virtual environment to make sure that we don't miss a beat. And whether it's on Zoom or Skype or FaceTime, whether it's sending pictures, whether it's doing virtual tours, which I'll talk a little bit about, it's been phenomenal. And to say that the planning process is going well would be an understatement, because I think the strength of that partnership and just how everybody's been flexible and making things happen has been incredible.
Does this mean I finally get a tour of the Higgins household virtually, where I get to see more than either just a window or your plants? Do I get I want to see what the living, I want to see how big the TV is. I think the people want to know what it looks like to be Rob Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, at some point we'll do the Tampa Bay 55 version of Cribs.
I like that.
You may be too young for that, Ryan.
Oh, no. I know what Cribs is.
I think people want to see the Bass Casa as well, and see the the hammock that you've got out on the patio.
That's nice.
And everything else. At some point, we may do a special edition if we really run out of content. That's where
I like that.
With
you and I, buddy, I don't think we're going to be short on content. That's for sure. You mentioned virtually, and one event that I really didn't get to go to because I was busy editing this podcast on Radio Row last year, feels like last year, for Super Bowl 54 when we were in Miami in January, leading up to the game in February, was the NFL honors and the red carpet. And it was really cool to see the atmosphere, the vibe, the outfits, everything that led up to that. And I know when speaking of venues, the Straz Center is where they're looking at potentially having that NFL honors event right there down on the Riverwalk. And I know virtually, to be able to scope that out, you guys had to help them out a little bit, the team with the NFL, no?
Well, hey, the Straz did a fantastic job. Yesterday, they actually created this custom virtual tour where they took them backstage and took them through all the seating, and then as well where the loading areas, as well as some of the construction they have going on. And they spent a lot of time on putting it all together. It was the first time the Straz had done one of these virtual tours like this. I think from what we understand from the NFL, it was one of the first or one of the better ones they've seen from their end too. So just really proud of how our community partners are doing everything we can to make sure that we're not only where we need to be from a planning standpoint, but also getting out in front of it. And so Straz did a fantastic job with that. I think there's going to be more of those. Like I said, there's been a lot taking place on FaceTime and sending via electronically pictures and whatnot too. So you name it, technology wise, we're trying to take advantage of it. But again, we're only as strong as our community partners, and as they step up, our community shines even more.
Yeah, I mean that it really helps people as you start to plan these events with partners like you have with the Straz and some of the other venues around town, that they can virtually take people through. And again, we're all trying to adjust in this new world, in this new normal. But I know there's something that you set out, you and your team, this portal, where it can assist virtually with some of these these teams that want to come in here and check out these venues. Elaborate on that a little bit, because that seems pretty cool, and it's a good initiative to kind of give the listeners a little bit of an idea of how you guys are adjusting in this new normal to still be able to put this event on.
Well, you look at Super Bowl in totality, whether it's the NFL signature events or the host committee events or some of the NFL partners events to some of what we call the unsanctioned events that maybe don't have a direct Super Bowl affiliation. They all need great homes. And we're fortunate being in a destination like our hometown that we've got some awesome venues. We wanted to really set out to be a fantastic matchmaker of sorts. So Katie Kicklighter on our host committee team really helps head up that effort. One of the things that she helped create was a portal that showcases all these different event venues that could potentially play home to all these different events. So the events can log on, check out pictures, look at specifications in terms of square footage and things that they need to help plan their event, so they can start narrowing down their list and settling into their venues of choice. The next level or layer to that too is the inclusion of our Business Connect vendors. So as they continue to plan their event, after they find the place they want to host it, we want to make sure that we do everything we can to prop up our great small businesses that are part of the Business Connect initiative. And so we also want to play matchmaker from that standpoint. So it's really a first of its kind initiative. We're really excited with where Katie and Claire and our team and everybody else has gotten us to this point. I think we want to have Katie on at some point here in the near future to talk about and a little bit more of the specifics behind it. But again, I think in this virtual remote environment, it's little things like that are paying a really big difference for us.
And look, everybody's kind of adjusting to how to plan virtually with the Super Bowl, the biggest of big events. And I think you can take a little bit of what we saw from the NFL draft. Peter O'Reilly and his team really did an amazing, and that's an understatement to say that, the amazing job they did in putting on this draft virtually that really, okay, there was a little hiccups here and there, maybe on a broadcast or, standpoint, but it was flawless. So when you look at what they did, Rob, and speaking of events that Peter and his team does, you could take a little bit of what we learned from something like the NFL draft and apply it to planning for the Super Bowl.
100%. I mean, you look at what they pulled off from a technology standpoint, a broadcast standpoint, and then you marry it with a lot of the human interest stories that they laid into it. We had a chance to talk to OJ Howard too in advance of the draft, and him talk about how special it was for him to be with his family during that moment too. So I think there's things that not only the NFL, but that will, in the world of sports business and marketing, we'll all take away from that. Great things that we learned that were unprecedented in terms of things that were able to be accomplished, and really our hats off to Peter and his team. We're joined by the most anticipated guest I have had on this podcast. I mentioned before,
He's so
Andrew
nervous
Hawkins.
To introduce you, Peter.
Andrew Hawkins was first in terms of who we wanted to talk to. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, we got to get Peter O'Reilly on here. So Executive Vice President of Club Business and League Events, our good friend Peter O'Reilly joins us today.
Good to be with you, Rob. Good to be with you, Ryan. I know you say that to all the guests. I listen to your show, so you can't get away with that with me.
Are you
You and Mama Higgins are the two, and we could not be more grateful. You represent half of our listenership.
Oh no, all good, and Mama goes first for sure on that
you're
one.
forgetting about Mama Bass as well. So that's another
There,
portion
we
of the
got three.
listenership. Yeah, so we're chugging along. Peter, you certainly, I'm sure, are busy. It really is incredible. I want to start first before we get into the Super Bowl with the NFL draft, since we just saw that. I really it's a hats off to you, your team, all the broadcast networks. It seemed seamless, even though I know it wasn't. It was so much fun to really be invited, not only into player homes, but into the commissioner's home. Everybody, memes are going all around about the coaches. Cliff Kingsbury certainly had the best setup of anybody, I think.
Yeah, it's nice.
Was it obviously when the stress of everything settled down and you went through it all, when you look back, there were some positives that you can take away from this, right? That maybe you can blend into future drafts when we're not all relegated to staying at home.
Yeah, I think there's a ton that we can learn from it, and that we will move forward in a world where hopefully next year in Cleveland, we'll be in a physical environment. But I would say that this draft forever changed the way we look at drafts moving forward. And you were definitely going to bring some of those things through. And it's great to be able to have just under a year to plan for those things versus the somewhat 4.5 week wild ride that it was. But to your point, those moments, like everything we all do, it's about moments, and the intimacy and just human moments that were created, whether it was with the prospects or with the GM's homes or in the commissioner's basement, where I was on, video conference with him for 3 days straight in his basement. So that was one that I'll stick with me for a long time. But you're right. There's a lot that we can learn from that. And we hope to have fans fully together, obviously, for next year's draft and a green room of prospects. But the ability to reach that many more prospects and have simple camera setups to see those moments and to talk to those prospects, I think we're not going backwards from that as we head into 2021.
Was there a favorite moment of the group? There were so many across each of the days.
It had to be the
one that
commissioner
stands out.
slowly reclining in his chair. That went everywhere, Peter.
He was a good sport. He was very clear that he was going to be, if everyone's going home, he was going to be at home. It was very clear where it was going to be. That's the chair in which he has watched football games for the last 30 years. So it is well groomed to his body. And it was great. And, he was having some fun with it, and, eating some M&Ms, and those guys in there, a couple of people in there reducing it down, people thinking he was just crushing M&Ms. But, on a more serious note, Rob, I think in terms of the moments, it was, we measured our success, but can we do this safely? Can we do it efficiently? Can we do it with competitive equity? Can we do right by fans and provide an escape? And then can we do some good? And those are the moments that'll stick with me in terms of being able to pay tribute to first responders and frontline workers and others. And you may have seen towards the end of Saturday, the commissioner called a doctor down in Baltimore who's just a great guy. And he had been part of the virtual inner circle, those fans behind the commissioner there. But we'd seen his video, and it was really inspiring. He was working with COVID patients in his practice, and he always wears a Ravens, his scrubs with the Ravens logo on it. So we called him right after. He had no idea commissioner was calling, and he surprised him. And he was kind of like, who the heck is this? And, Roger Goodell. And then commissioner thanked him for service on the front lines. And then we surprised him with Super Bowl tickets to Super Bowl 55 to connect the dots here in Tampa. And that was a really special moment that there were just a lot of those little moments that made it unique and special, and so much more than just who was picked and where.
How did it all come together in a 30-day window or 40-day window, whatever it was, with Draftathon and everything you guys had going on multiple screens and on multiple channels and everything else? Like, as you look back, how proud are you of your team and the overall process being as expedited as it was?
No, it still gives me chills. It's Rob, you know our team really well, and we work so closely with you and your team, and that core team, either on the event side, but across all the departments that you've gotten to know as well. Everybody just came together with the clubs, who are a huge part of it, our partner at ESPN and ABC, and everyone when ultimately the decision was made, this thing's going to be fully virtual. We're going to be fully remote. We're obviously going to live by the guidelines of the day. That's where just the creativity kicked in, and everybody was wearing different hats, but you end up going back to those objectives. Can we do right by the fans? Can we do right by the prospects? And can we do right by the broader society, knowing we just play a little small role in the midst of everything going on, but we could provide some hope. And it was a lot of video conferences like this, with us just kind of spitballing and getting there, and then pulling it all together. And then ultimately you knew there'd be some forgiveness if things froze or didn't work. Unfortunately, we didn't have much of that, and that's thanks to, the IT folks are just rock stars, and the broadcast operations people are rock stars, because they just made it all work.
Certainly, I don't think it's a stretch to say, Peter, that might have been the most challenging draft that you had to prepare for, and given the dynamics of where we are, in our society right now, and what we're dealing with. Would you also say that maybe this is the most difficult Super Bowl to prepare for? I know we're still months out, but given the fact that you're not able to possibly fly here for site visits, and just all the things you now have to do virtually, is it safe to say that maybe this is the most difficult Super Bowl to prepare for, given what we're going through?
I think that's probably right. We have an incredible partner, though, so that makes it easier. But
well set up, guys. Well set up. We went from although Ryan just took us from the most important Super Bowl of our lifetimes to the most difficult, and I don't know that's going to be our catchphrase, Ryan. But we'll see.
No, but Ryan, it's a good question, because it is.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah. It is different, and it is challenging, and I think Rob would agree. The thing about Super Bowls is it's this massive bucket list event. It continues to grow every year. And probably the answer to that question every year, though it's a unique year, would be yes, because you're always trying to raise the bar a little bit higher and do things a little bit better to serve fans and partners, and to celebrate the market we're in appropriately. But to your specific point, yes, it's different, because we are, with Rob's team, going through virtual planning, and our, traditional March and June planning meetings will not be done in person. And it makes you really have to be incredibly disciplined on, okay, are we getting everything done? And this is not smoke. This is, we are incredibly appreciative and reliant on our partners on the ground down in Tampa Bay to help us navigate and get things done, where we might not be able to fully tour a venue that we're still finalizing, where, these guys are showing us on FaceTime, or we're going on websites or different things. So it'll be a challenge, but I have so much faith in the entire group, including the folks down there, to rise to the challenge. And it'll definitely be a memorable one for sure.
Looking back at this past year's Super Bowl, I want to talk more on Super Bowl 55, but as you look back on Super Bowl 54 in Miami, I'll never forget a couple days after, you visited with the facility managers group that I spoke to. I had the unfortunate duty of following you in the speaking order, but you shared some key takeaways with that group. It's basically the stadium managers from around the country. Now, as you look back and the dust has settled in even more, what are some of your biggest takeaways from Super Bowl 54?
Yeah, so it was, Super Bowl LIV was a great one, obviously a historic one in a market where we've been, more than any other market. It was the culmination of the 100th season. So those are the things that really stood out there. And to me, it comes back to the moments like having the all-time team there, having all of those people on the field, and the way that came together, and the interactions of those players, and seeing, Brady and Montana talking there, and others. Another Tampa reference there. And those things, and the way we're able to kind of combine this look back with a look forward, forward forever. And within that, it was those moments that really, really came together. The fact, that moment at the coin toss where we had 4 100-year-old plus World War II veterans there for the coin toss, which was just really powerful, tied to the 75th of World War II. And then that just infusion of energy when Bunchy and the youth football kids ran onto the field to culminate that spot. So those moments will stick with me. And then we keep learning every year. Obviously, Hard Rock Stadium is a beautiful stadium that it was a great showcase for us. So there's a lot we learn there. And as you know, and you're living, there are things that don't always work perfectly around Super Bowl that you evolve as you move into the next year. And we're excited about that in terms of what we can do and evolving the fan experience in Tampa.
Let me ask you, on an idea like as granular as that augmented reality youth football moment, which there wasn't a person in the stadium or at home that didn't get chills from that. Like, how does an idea like that come together? Take us through a little bit of the genesis of where that came from, and then all the way to the finish, what it was like behind the scenes.
Yeah, so that one, we'll take the spot, the kind of the next 100 spot is what we called it, and then the live integration into the stadium. So that, lots of credit for that core concept goes to Tim Ellis, who's our chief marketing officer, and our agency 72 and Sunny. But that idea stemmed from you guys remember probably in Super Bowl 53, the spot we had to kick off the 100th season, all the legends and current players and going after the ball and tackling the cake and Marshawn and all that stuff. So it was, okay, that was our setting the tone. How do we set the tone for the next 100, and what does that look like? So that germ of an idea of, let's celebrate all levels of football, let's celebrate youth, but weave in some of those iconic players, was the core idea that came out of internally in our marketing team and then into the agency. And then the idea started to surface of, could we do something live? You've kind of seen these different live Super Bowl commercials where they've tried to do things, but nothing on that scale where you're right before, it doesn't even feel like a commercial. It feels like a piece of content. So that idea we looked at in a lot of different ways, and then brought our broadcast partner Fox into it, and how could we pull it off right before kickoff? They're going to be the players on the field literally before the biggest game of their lives. How do you weave this in there in a smart way? So just takes a lot of creative folks, and then you do all of the logistics of, okay, how do we find these 32 kids? Each club did their own contest to find the boys and girls who were part of that. Then we bring them in. We don't tell them that they're actually going to be on the field, because we want to keep that a secret more broadly. So you kind of keep this all under wraps, and then you rehearse it a couple days before, still try to keep it under wraps. And then ultimately you rehearse, and then you cross your fingers and it works out.
How many rehearsals do you need to nail in a row for Peter O'Reilly to feel good that it's going to work on game day?
We did fewer than I would have hoped. We do this, as you know, and we're going to have the same conversation at Raymond James. This is a grass field environment. So it's that balance of rehearsing on a grass field that you want to be pristine for game day, because it's, again, the biggest game of these guys' lives, but rehearsing. So we run through that with halftime show for sure. So we had a couple of the early rehearsals were ugly, where, steady cam operators were running into shots, and, a bunch of looky-loos were running around. So we cleaned it up, got a couple of good takes, and then said, let's do it on Sunday.
Speaking of halftime shows, do I get to put in my requests to you personally for who I'd like to see in the halftime?
You can put in requests, Ryan.
I've told Ryan plenty of times that he's got no requests he can give to me for Yacht Village, for halftime, for the anthem, for tickets, for anything. He got the polo, Peter, and that's where we draw the line.
I'll let you handle those requests. He can throw names out for halftime.
There we go. All right. See,
I'm not gonna promise anything.
This is why I like Peter. Peter understands me a little bit more. No, seriously, Peter, that was that commercial, the way that was done, it really blew up on social media. A big congrats to you and your team, and your entire marketing team as well for pulling that off. It was exceptional. You mentioned Miami being the place where you guys have hosted the most Super Bowls. Tampa's certainly not far behind. You guys will be here in February for Super Bowl in 2021. As we get set for that and get ready for that, Tampa is a place that you guys love to come to. Why is this such a perfect spot? And what makes this somewhere that will flourish, as Rob put it, maybe the most important Super Bowl of our lifetime? What makes this the perfect place?
Yeah, I mean, Tampa obviously, as you said, has a great history of hosting Super Bowls, and has done such great work over the years related to big events as well as Super Bowls. So that's part of what you all do so well down there. And then it lays out really well. What I'm so excited since we were last down in Tampa for a Super Bowl is the way that Tampa has evolved, and you just start to see the way that downtown has evolved, and the new hotels, and the way that it's so connected, and the opportunity to do so many new things. As you and Rob know so well, the Super Bowl's evolved quite a bit since we were last down in Tampa in terms of what that more than week-long celebration looks like for fans. So to have the canvas that now downtown Tampa allows to do those type of events that have gotten so much bigger really excites us. And I think it is also, and it may sound cliche to talk about, it's also, from my perspective, it's about the partnership and the ability to just lock arms, be honest with each other, work through issues, trust each other. And that's the core of what, in my mind, it's those intangible things that create really successful Super Bowls. And that's both at the host committee level, it's at the public level where, whether it's the city of Tampa and Mayor Castor, or the Hillsborough County level, who have been huge supporters of the host committee and the Super Bowl overall. So those type of partnerships are the reason that the owners said, yes, let's go back to Tampa and let's do this right. And again, to your point, what'll be a really big and important moment to culminate this really unique and challenging year.
Rob, how many weeks out are we now?
We are about 40 weeks out, right?
40 weeks, okay.
39, right on that cusp. It depends on how you count it down.
So we're
right
almost
there.
right there. Peter, where are we in the planning processes as you're, again, virtually starting to do some of these things virtually, but where are you at this point as we start to inch closer? Because the day will be here before you know it.
Yeah, as one of my former colleagues who Rob met in the past, Mary Pat Algenthal, used to say, we're in kind of the wet cement phase where stuff is, starting to take form and get locked in. I think we feel really good about the overall plan in terms of how the week lays out, how the stadium campus lays out, the different programs that we have in place in partnership with the host committee, which are all still rolling out in full, despite doing some of these things virtually. So we are in the mode heading into our next phase of planning meetings, which will be the first week of June. We'll do them virtually, but we'll do them efficiently and really productively to move things forward. But I love to see and get the reports from my team and from Rob and his team on the way that Tampa Bay is embracing this Super Bowl. Obviously, Tampa's hot in NFL land overall, but the support from ambassadors and the support from local businesses and especially diverse businesses around our Business Connect program, those are the things, that's the engine that makes the Super Bowl go. The people, like the ambassadors, the volunteers, and the local partners who come and are part of making it special and unique and not just like any other Super Bowl. So feel great about where we are overall. A lot of work to do. There always is. Open questions, challenges to knock down, that Rob will knock down. And
together, we'll knock down together.
Knock down together. Sorry.
That's it. Peter, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do have a serious question for you. Ryan and I have talked a lot about it. But since I was born and raised in Tampa, I'm going to need some sort of official sign-off based off of the success of the offseason of the Bucks to be able to root for an undefeated season and the first ever team to win it at home. Like, again, I'm going to need like a pure yes or no answer on record if that's going to be okay as the president and CEO of the host committee for me to go ahead and show my true colors here, because the excitement when it comes to the Bucks is at an all-time high, and I think it'd be unfair if I wasn't able to do that. I
give you that dispensation, Rob. You heard
it, Ryan.
Do that. That is okay. I think that there's precedence. You are lifelong fan representing your town, and that would be one for the record books. And we've come close recently, and it always makes for some operational curveballs. But hey, no, you go ahead and and map that scenario in your head.
I guess
Perfect. I've been mapping it for quite some time. Don't you worry.
I mean, if that's the case, then I can root for the AFC team to beat Tua and my Miami Dolphins playing the Bucs.
Sure.
In the Super Bowl. So, we're just all going to have a rooting interest here. That for sure works.
Hey, Florida Super Bowl.
Well, hey, Peter, I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. And even more importantly, the partnership with your team. I think when we embarked on this journey, however many months ago, I think we all were friends. I think based off of everything we've been working so hard together on in recent months, we're already family, and we can't wait for these next 270 days and beyond. So thanks for everything you're doing from a leadership standpoint. Thanks to all your team, Matt, Aubrey, Nikki, all of them. I hate to even say them specifically because there's so many of them that are doing such a fantastic job day in and day out. And my goodness, we couldn't have any better partners than you guys. So we really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And you use the right word. It's a family. It's a Super Bowl family. All of the partners down there, the vendors, the others, and Matt Shapiro said that I would learn from him being on this podcast from his opening night appearance, and I took notes. I tried to prepare, but that'll
now become the second highest rated podcast we've ever had. So Matt will slide down a rung, and now you will overtake the top spot. But we got to have you back on here at some point too.
Would love to do it. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Rob and Ryan. Nice to talk with you. Really enjoyed it.
I guess if this is a family, I'm the distant cousin, but I am appreciative of being a part of the families.
Oh, we love our cousins.
It's almost like you and Peter spend, I don't know, every week on Zoom calls with how in sync you two. It's like simpatico. You, Peter, always on the same page, my man. I try to rattle you two, tried to rattle you on the last podcast, tried to get them a little bit here. You guys are like a steel cage, man. I can't get through.
Hopefully after Peter listens to his interview, he logs off so he doesn't hear what an insult that is that you just compared him to me, Ryan. I appreciate that. Compliment for me, insult to him. I totally get it. But they have been such incredible partners. I think when we embarked on this, I don't think anybody could have envisioned, everything that the last couple months would include. And it takes a really strong partnership, and we're fortunate with our family at the NFL to be right there and in lockstep with them. And just we're truly enjoying being in the trenches with them from a planning standpoint. They've been fantastic partners. I know they're going to be awesome partners, and we just look forward to these next 270 days with them.
It doesn't just take partnership, Rob. It takes leadership, and that's what you, your team, Peter, his team, us, and our team at 10 Tampa Bay. We're all in this together in these planning stages. And as we look towards the next, as you mentioned, 270 days, 39, 40 weeks coming up, where are we right now? I know I asked Peter that, but just as a standpoint from you and your team, I try to ask each and every week just where we are, what's on the horizon, what's coming up. I know there's some initiatives that we've hinted at, Forever 55 being one of them, that are in those final planning stages to where we can start really releasing that and working towards that. So where are we right now, Rob?
Well, I love that wet cement analogy because you think about it, a lot of planning has been poured into the framework, and while it's not finalized yet, there's still a chance to make a good impact with it, and you're seeing that on a variety of fronts. I spoke previously about all the different event venues coming together. You see that from a hotel standpoint and some of the decisions being made there. We just had a Business Connect advisory committee meeting yesterday where LaKendria and Bermitra are doing a fantastic job on that front. You talk about, our social legacy initiative, Forever 55, which we're really excited to unveil. Claire Lessinger, our team's been working really hard from that standpoint with all these different community partners that are tied in to it. So you'll start to see those pillars in the unveiling of just this lasting legacy that Super Bowl 55 will create around it. Something we haven't had an opportunity to talk a lot about yet, but is ultra important and a big part of our game plan is sustainability. That's a huge part of every big event we do. The NFL has their NFL Green Initiative. Not only will we work hand in hand with that, but we've got our host committee sustainability initiatives where we want to make sure we're doing everything we can collaboratively to help the environment as well. There's things like branding and out of home and marketing and all of these different aspects, all these different ingredients that come together as part of the overall recipe. So we're excited over these next couple months to really involve guests from both sides of this partnership to start to talk about how these things are coming together. But I can tell you, it is an all day, every day planning effort right now, and we couldn't be more excited with how it's coming together.
It's funny, Rob, because once the NFL schedule got released and you're starting to look at the calendar and you're planning things out, not that it hasn't been real before, because we've been doing this each and every week since Super Bowl 54, but it just feels more realistic. Like, this is coming, this is happening. We're going to have this day, this will be here before you know it. And I know you mentioned game day every day. That's one of the taglines that you and your team live by. But you get that sense, right? Those juices are starting to flow, those competitive, just the anticipation of what's to come in February. You can start to feel it now.
Absolutely. I mean, not a minute goes by that our team isn't working to try to leverage at this point in time to its fullest extent. You heard Peter talk about, from their standpoint, they are constantly looking each year to raise the bar. And that's what, why it continues to become, more and more challenging each year, but also had to have more and more opportunities each year. And I think you see that with Team Tampa Bay. We want to take the lessons we learn with each of these big events, roll it into the next event, and make it even more successful. And naturally, when you talk about the opportunity when it comes to Super Bowl specifically, that's the big stage that our community deserves to be on. And so I think our staff treats that as the honor that it is to be able to help do this in conjunction with all these great community partners. And we just are savoring every minute, making sure not a minute goes by that we're not maximizing the opportunity.
I need you to get some sleep, buddy, because, you're Superman when it comes to CEO of the host committee. You're super dad. Your kids are doing Zoom classrooms. I mean, do you have a moment where you can actually relax? You hang out with me, but that's not really relaxing.
I took 10 minutes yesterday to get a haircut. I'm surprised you didn't notice,
Oh,
Ryan. But
did.
We've whacked the chia pet down.
I was wondering why you look so normal.
I feel really excited about that, but now that 10 minutes is over, it's back to work, and it's back to making it happen. So, but it's all good. I mean, I think, like I said, I think our staff is just so excited. And when you have a partner like the NFL and Peter and his team that has the same mutual commitment to excellence and doing the right thing, it just makes it such a fun journey.
I think I see a little gray now that you mention it in that hair there, buddy. I think it's
a little salt and pepper. Yep. Starting to wear my age. Exactly. It's distinguished though. It doesn't make me look old. It makes me look distinguished.
It looks great. I'm just worried that come February 7th, 2021, the whole thing's going to be gray.
That's something we can track over time with the Tampa Bay 55 podcast. I'm sure everybody will appreciate it. But the most important part of this episode, Ryan, you know it and I know it. I have the official green light to support the movement for this undefeated Buccaneers season to culminate at Raymond James Stadium on February 7th.
You're like a kid at a candy store right now, Rob. All right. By the way, I just Amazoned you some hair dye, so it's headed your way.
Oh, thank you. We'll see. Hopefully nobody notices it. You should have not announced that. You should have not announced it, but we appreciate it. Thanks for the help, buddy. You always coming back.